Okay. Peace Oakland. Today is Monday, July 22nd. Let's jump right into it. We're going to be talking about Oakland's macro program today. So first, let me tell you what inspired me to make this episode. In my neighborhood of the lower bottoms of West Oakland, we have a lot of people who were born and raised in this neighborhood who are unhoused. Many of them actually have family who live nearby, but because of their mental situation, they've been sleeping outside for a matter of years. Mark is one of these people. So Mark is a sweet guy. Everyone in the neighborhood knows him, and he's definitely mentally ill. He hoards things. He makes what we call like a Mark's nest. It's just common for mentally ill people to collect garbage and refuse and put it around themselves and sort of like play with the stuff. So Mark is one of those people. He's actually, we have talks about him, how incredibly, and don't take this the wrong way, but strong. The fact that this man has been sleeping, I've been here 10 years, and Mark has been sleeping on the street, on the cold sidewalk, sometimes with not even a blanket to cover him. Yes, we give him blankets, we give him water. His family lives in the neighborhood. They don't want him for whatever reason. He can't stay in the house. I haven't gotten too much information from him, but there have been things like it's just not safe. So he either is a danger to burning the house down or things like that. So Mark sleeps outside. Now, the other day, Mark was sleeping underneath a park bench while school was in session. And he was really bad off. He had open wounds. He looked like he was just kind of distraught. And he was trying to like sleep underneath the park bench for shelter. And kids were like looking at him. Now, across the street, there's another young man. I don't know his name. We call him Placebo because he's always snorting baking soda. Yes, I know. It's whatever. But he snorts baking soda all day. I swear to God, this guy sits there with a pound of baking soda and he snorts it like it's Coke. He's also sitting there with his pants off right across the street from the school. And so for the first time ever, I said, you know what? Macro has a phone number now after 2 years. We'll get into why Macro first finally got a dispatch number. But then I called up Macro. This was on Tuesday of this week. So I called up Macro. They pick up fairly quick, and I described the situation. I gave them my number and told them to call me back, and then I waited. I never saw anyone from Macro come. Eventually, Mark got up and left. Placebo stood across the street, probably right now, snorting baking soda at 8 o'clock at night, and he does it all day in front of the kids. Now, this is right next to Prescott Elementary School. And these children have to play while watching these two Black men pretty much waste away right in front of them. One of them with open wounds and flies around and just really looking like he is in visible pain. Macro never showed up. So Oakland's macro program, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's the old saying. But in Oakland, the road to hell is paved with woke intention. They were never meant to work. They were meant to extract resources from the city. They were basically meant, in my opinion, to usher in a new form of government, first by making things so unlivable here that people are begging for something different to save them. And so, without further ado, let's get into the macro program. Macro started with Oakland's defund the police movement. Now, here's a quick refresher for everybody who doesn't quite understand what happened with defund the police. And yes, Oakland absolutely did defund our police. But not just that, the defund the police movement nationwide began in Oakland, California in 2017 with Cat Brooks and the formation of the Anti-Police Terror Project. 2017, they were responding to a wave of killings in 2015 in which Oakland Police Department killed 5 Black people in the streets of Oakland. They built momentum, the movement caught nationwide, and then with Ferguson, it got even more momentum. Then when you move into 2022 with the summer of George Floyd and the civil unrest around Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and the other individual in Ohio whose name escaped me, who was killed in Walmart, you had a nationwide backlash against policing, and that's when ATPC had their heyday. Macro was the result of the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force, which started to divert funds from OPD over to nonviolent interventionists, which ended up becoming the Macro program. ATPT was one of several organizations to apply for a contract to run macro for the city. Co-founded by Carol Fife, now that they have their preferred elected official win, they tried to backdoor and get a contract. Luckily for us, for at least this contract, they were not successful in getting it, which is one of the reasons why Cat Brooks was so upset in the years to follow, because her little carefully planned grip didn't go right. Aha! Here's Cat Brooks right here. The task force, the people of Oakland making big moves. Big moves. Okay. Let's look at the Anti-Police Terror Project's RFP to see what sort of rhetoric and what their plans were for the city. And here we have the RFP. This is got from a public records request. I'm not quite sure who filed for it. There you go, Cat Brooks, co-founder of Mental Health First Oakland, a project of the Anti-Police Terror Project. This RFP is very interesting. There is a challenge here. The primary ongoing challenge has been the inability to increase our dispatch capacity to meet the demand without automated involvement of law enforcement. Additionally, automatic involvement of law enforcement. Additionally, lack of funding for promoting of our services to ensure that impacted communities are aware of our programming. They're already speaking in ownership of macro. They really believe that they were going to get this contract. I cannot tell you how pissed off Kitty was when they realized that not only did they not get it, but they were not going to be giving it to the community nonprofit industrial complex at all, and would instead be rerouting this through Oakland Fire Department. After $18 million invested into the macro program, they didn't even have a dispatch. It took them 2 full years to get a number. 2 years to get a number? How do you plan to take responsibilities from Oakland? Ask for people to call a number so they don't get the police, then give them this long fire number or 311 that's not dedicated. Then they have to reroute it and patch it and eventually just end up sending first responders. It seems enormously expensive to do something like this. And it seems that it wasn't very well thought out to install this program without something as simple as a dispatch number. Speaking of expensive, macro is 5 times more expensive than the police that it replaced. And for what? For this next segment, we're going to be deep diving into the Oakland Report, founded by Tim Gardner. The Oakland Report is one of the best sources for timely, relevant, and actionable information in Oakland politics. I encourage you to go to oaklandreport.com, subscribe there, come back, subscribe to Gotham Oakland. Take a quick break before we move on. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Comments are great. This is where the community gets to discuss what's going on. I want to see a lively debate in these things. If you think macro worked, say it. If you think macro didn't work, say it. If you got an experience like me where you called macro to get help for a neighbor in direct and they failed to show up or call you back, let your voice be heard. Moving on, we're going to be sharing the Oakland Report, which again is one of the best reports in Oakland for politics, far better than Soggy Side. The Soggy Side somehow misses that macro costs 5 times more than the police have replaced to do a worse job or questionable job. They missed that. I'm not sure, but they celebrated this number after 2 years. That's what they report on. Okay, let's deep dive into the numbers behind macro. Now, if you recall, I'm going to do a quick refresher for those of you who just joined the program or who are skipping to this part. Macro was founded in 2020. It was part of the Defund the Police movement led by City Councilwoman Nikki Fortunato Bass and City Councilwoman and City Council President Rebecca Kaplan. The initial goal was to defund upwards of 50% of the police's budget. 50%. Luckily for us, Councilmember Lauren Taylor pushed for a reimagining public safety task force. This task force consisted of a various number of community members. Out of this task force, there was actually a famous letter, a now famous letter, written by 5 Black community members 5 Black community members, Carl Wyatt, Keisha, John Jones III, and I believe there was a few others in there, Tafara, and I forgot the fifth. But these 5 Black community members wrote a letter saying, do not cut the police budget without an actual plan. So the only actual plan that came out of the defund movement was macro. And the purpose of macro was to replace the police, the bad police who hate people, with the, because that's kind of oversimplistic. I have an interesting relationship with law enforcement, having spent decades of my life in cannabis, black trade, and white market. And I've spent more time looking in my rearview mirror than in front when driving on the 5 or the 99 with the work in the trunk. So that being said, I don't have a warm and fuzzy spot for law enforcement. However, it's cops and robbers, not robbers. We have to acknowledge that, again, that there are criminals out there. We have to acknowledge that there is a need to actually be able to have safe and livable cities in order to do business, or you go bankrupt. I don't know why we have to say that over and over again, but let's look at the language here. They wanted macro to deliver more equitable outcomes to BIPOC communities. I don't like to use that word, but for those of you who don't know what BIPOC means, it's Black, Indigenous, people of color. I just say Black and brown people, who are most impacted by the lack of housing, economic stability, support services, over policing, intercommunal violence, and the carceral state. It goes on to say that in practice, model after the CAHOOS program in Eugene, Oregon, macro seeks to reduce police costs and reduce interactions, and make that bigger, between BIPOC individuals with police to facilitate access to social and health services for BIPOC individuals. What about white people? I don't know about you, but when I look at these RVs, when I look at the open-air drug markets and encampments, I see just as many white people who are strung out, addicted to drugs, because they came here for drug tourism. They need help too. So I'm not quite sure if macro meant to ignore, if you're not BIPOC, does macro service you? Or is it meant for you, or only Black and brown people deserve to be safe from police terror, I guess, is the framing from elected officials, mind you. But in practice, macro has functioned primarily to serve Oakland's homeless population, with a particular focus on those with mental health and drug crises. 92% of macro service recipients are the unhoused. 92%. But people are free to refuse macro support, and most of the time they do. Residents only accepted help in 19% of the cases in the macro program, and fewer than 6% of the cases result in the provision of mental health or drug treatment services. The math ain't mathing. It's not mathing. You don't have to take the help. They're not trained to deal with the level of high acuity of drug and mental illness that the average person who is unhoused on the street has at this stage of the game due to the fentanyl crisis and all these other new drugs that are coming in here. And they often must call or defer to the Alameda County Behavioral Health or the Oakland Police Department anyway to address the issue. Here's an example here of a macro responder pleads with a homeless man to go to the hospital. Sorry about that. I don't know why my mouse is. Let me. So next up, macro is expensive. Each referral costs macro nearly $3,000. But it doesn't cost macro $3,000. It costs me and you $3,000 to Oakland taxpayers. Overall, macro spent $3.1 million in 2023 to deliver services and has a $9 million budget for 2024 to triple its staff. Meanwhile, macro saves the Oakland Police Department very little, if anything. Based on the current service volume, it's saving police only $523,000 per year. That's 17 cents saved for every dollar macro spend. Even with its planned expansion, a large increase in operational efficiency, macro will only save 20 cents in police costs per dollar spent. Now, you can't measure holistic care that actually leads to a healthier community in Dallas. The same way you can't put a price on democracy. However, if it's not working, if they're not servicing people, they're just dropping off water bottles, and if they got a Carlo PD or Alameda County Behavioral Health anyway, why do we continue to fund this program? Okay, moving on. Despite the fanfare and good intentions, people love their new woke program. It's not improving to be cost effective. So also, Macro collects very little data. Very little data is collected by Macro. Let's talk about how much Macro costs. Each of Macro's referrals cost nearly $3,000. And overall, it spent $3.1 million in 2023 to deliver its services. It has a $9 million budget for 2022 to triple its staff. But it saves OPD very little. Based on our current service volume, we're only saving around $500,000 a year. That's 17 cents saved on every dollar Macro spends. Even with this planned expansion and a large increase in operational efficiency, Macro would only save 20 cents in police costs per dollar spent. But where are the metrics? Where are the metrics? Now, granted, you can't put a cost on a safe and livable society. Well, you can if you can't afford it. You don't want to go bankrupt. But I'm not saying that we should penny pinch on things that could be working and help transform a society from one that potentially over-policed, experiencing large levels of mental health crisis, to one that people actually feel happy, healthy, and free. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is Macro working. Because if it was meant to actually help the mental health problem, then why is it being focused solely on the homeless and being extremely inefficient in the way that's being used? Why is it virtue signaling that it's only for the BIPOC community when Oakland's half white? So there's leaving half of Oakland's taxpayers out and the ability to call for Macro services if someone's feeling some sort of mental duress. It's not adding up. It's seeming like one of those woke grifts here, and that's bankrupting the city. Let me go down a little bit more. He says that, to be fair, there are other potential benefits in Macro besides cost saving. These might include better or faster resolution of community disturbances caused by homeless persons, or Macro might improve the quality of life for the unhoused when they do have access to available services. But again, that wasn't working. Let's talk about actually how many people took the help from Macro. How many people actually took the help, considering that there's very little data to support it? Okay. Why was Macro created and why does it focus on homelessness? Great question. We went over that already. We went over that one. Macro was touted as a union job creation program. Very interesting. As noted by Felipe Cuevas, former SEIU 1021 president, he was just replaced very recently, and Felipe and I go way back. We almost got into a fist fight in a parking lot when I used to represent and be the East Bay director for SEIU 1021. Good guy. These positions must be kinds of good, permanent, in-house union jobs that allow working people to get ahead. Then why was Kat Brooks trying to take it for herself or her nonprofit? She's not adding up. Macro was enthusiastically created by the city council with hopes that it would address racial equity in public services, but did it? I don't think it did. Here's how we know. There were 5 goals of Macro. These are a combination of racial equity and police cost saving. Again, the city's half white, and a lot of our unhoused population is also white drug tourists. It seems like they're completely leaving them out in their need for help as well, which to me is problematic. I'm always here for Black people. I'm rooting for everybody Black. You look on my walls, you see Marcus Garvey and the Panthers and Harriet Tubman, my shiro. But doesn't mean I hate white people. It doesn't mean I'm completely going to leave white poor people out of the equation to think that they're not also experiencing the mental health effects and the depression due to late-stage capitalism and predatory capitalism. I guess, according to Oakland's woke city council, these things only affect the BIPOC community. Decreased criminal justice system involvement for people in crisis, especially BIPOC. But how do you know if this situation is going to turn violent or not? We don't know. And if they don't have to accept any help, matter of fact, I don't want to. Let me go back up here. There was a part here I want to make sure that I cover. People are few to refuse macro support, and generally they do refuse. Residents only accepted help in 19% of recorded cases, and in fewer than 6% of macro cases actually end up with someone actually going to drug rehab or seeking some sort of mental health services. As a matter of fact, the employees are not equipped or trained to deal with the most common issue with the unhoused, and they must commonly call Oakland Police Department anyway, or the Alameda County Health Department. What sense does that make? So are they a glorified extra dispatch, adding more cost for less efficient services that will end up being directed to another agency anyway? It doesn't add up. Okay, back down here. The Oakland report is great, by the way. Make sure that you check it out and read this for yourself. I don't have time to go through it all today, but I want to go through the goals of macro. And the reason I want to go through the goals of macro is because having measurable goals and then checking to see if whether those goals are met is a fundamental part of leadership, especially when it comes to when municipalities and places that receive taxpayer money. It should be paramount that we're always looking to prove that our actions are matching our ambition and that the goals that we're spending our money on are being met. So the third goal, increase connection to community-based services for people in crisis. We went through that. Redirection of macro-identified 911 calls to alternative community response system. There was no dispatch for 2 years. This reminds me of the homeless encampment policy, the encampment management policy that was rushed, thrown together performatively, and then put out with actually no structure, no measurable goals, or no ability to actually carry out its mission. It was performative and it was hollow. It was meant to virtue signal the same way the macro program has. The fifth, reduce Oakland Police expense and call volume related to 911 nonviolent calls involving people with mental health, substance abuse, and unsheltered individuals. Ask yourself this question. How many issues that start nonviolent with someone who's unhoused or having a drug episode stay that way? How many issues that begin nonviolently stay that way? And what happens when there's an escalation or the macro person feels unsafe? I tell you what happens. They have to call OPD anyway, or also the macro person ends up potentially getting harmed or injured. Okay, here are some of the unresolved questions. Amidst the optimism and advocacy for macro, a key recommendation was either ignored or overlooked. That recommendation is this: that the cities should also calculate annual cost savings from continued reduction in 911 calls responded to by OPD. Now, if you recall, our 911 system isn't functioning right to begin with. Oakland's 911 system was facing risk in state funding this month for not meeting the minimum metric. We got a pass. We never met those metrics. They gave us a pass. Why did they give us a pass? You can only speculate. They say it's because we're on the path, but on the path isn't meeting the minimum, and there's no idea when that path is going to meet the minimum. I believe they did that to save the political embarrassment and for this current election cycle, because it's actually becoming a huge deal that these democratic cities are not functioning properly and that these failed progressive or regressive policies are taking us a good deal backwards. So now, after the completion of the macro pilot's over, it's done. No more grace period. Macro is supposed to work. It's been nearly 3 years now. But the city or macro still has not provided any calculation or whether those savings warrant the $8 million per year budgeted to operate macro. They've also not quantified whether it has delivered a significant reduction in negative interactions with its client or police, or if it has substantially improved the quality of life to the client or the community. To date, macro has only tracked the quantity of contact and referrals, not its outcomes and impact. How many programs in the city have no measurable goals? They don't report back. They don't tell you if they're working. And even to the naked eye, it seems like it's not working. The city refuses to have this conversation. This is very alarming. We also note that macro services to the unhoused does not necessarily address the needs of a much larger population of housed residents who may be negatively impacted by crime or the criminal justice system. The unhoused aren't the only people having mental health problems. We're entering a bad economy. More people are having their vehicles foreclosed right now. More people are losing their home. It even happened in the 2008 Great Recession. I believe we're at the beginnings of the greatest recession. What happens when the economy implodes? You have a huge round of depression. You have a rise in domestic violence. What about the domestic violence angle? You have a rise in all types of issues due to depression or suicides or people over medicating. There's a storm coming or hitting in America. And if the macro program was working the way that it intended, it wouldn't focus the entirety of its resources on justice and how. And do not lower middle class house residents even have more compelling needs regarding to crime and criminal justice? Good point, Tim. These questions are all made more poignant given the hundreds of millions of dollars already spent by the city to address the unhoused. It's a bottomless black hole of our taxpayer money being spent by irresponsible ideologues who have no intentions of ever proving that these policies or these harebrained ideas work. Let's go on to the services. What services does macro provide? It's permitted to only handle non-violent and non-emergency needs. So primarily are focusing again on homelessness, mental health, or drug or alcohol abuse. There's a ride-along, this is interesting, in a series of articles, journalist Ren Farrow of KATW, never heard of that network, gotta look him up, illustrates a day in the life of macro after joining them for a series of ride-alongs. Noticeable in these stories is the intense effort by macro responders to convince homeless persons to accept social and health services that these individuals often refuse. Again, they refuse 70% of the time. Then macro leaves with no further action. That's what we're spending money for? I'm not quite sure that that's working. The Urban Strategies Council emphasizes that the success of the macro model depends on the referral of its clients to community-based and government care services. And those handoffs require direct transport by macro staff with warm handoffs to care providers and follow-up support. What that means is that macro actually needs to be empowered. I know they have these new vans right now. I wish I had a picture of it I would show you. They do have vans. Are they transporting people, or do they plan on transporting the unhoused in this van? But if they can't compel someone to take the help, and these numbers continue, are we wasting money on this program? Again, these services are voluntary, and there's a good part here. Macro and the Oakland Fire Department, where macro is housed, are not permitted nor trained to transport patients who may need involuntary emergency or advanced medical care. Only police, paramedics, or people with actual certifications have the authority to commit an individual and transport them. So I guess that just answered my own question. Thank you, Tim. No, these vans can't transport anyone. So what is going on with this macro program? In terms of the city labor agreement, the fire department and city employees are not permitted to respond to 5150 situations. So they end up having to get someone from Alameda County Health or the Oakland Police Department there anyway. The math ain't mathing. Again, here's some more data. In 2022, 68% of OPD's community caretaking staff, which include mental health calls, were 5150 actions. These are OPD staff. So 68% of the stop that the Oakland Police Department made were 5150 actions. Macro can't help with those, but if their whole purpose is to relieve OPD of this burden, but they don't have the certifications to help, what is this program actually doing? The high proportion of these 5150 outcomes reflect that 99.9% of mental health dispatch calls were priority 1 or 2, urgent, and none were macro eligible. Data provided in the appendix if you want to go and check this out. So for the vast majority of even potential calls that OPD could have some support on, they're actually not qualified or certified to handle these 5150 calls. And even if macro did have the authority or training to enforce the voluntary services or treatment, it is contrary to its policy and principles of the program to incarcerate one. Because then they're taking you out of your will. We're building trust with the community. It's prioritized over other outcomes. How does macro operate? Tim, clap for Tim. Tim, you did an outstanding job here. I think a quick caveat. Trash Night Heron, the blogger who now, because he's using his name Omar, you can find his Twitter handle with, what is it called? Hyphy _ Republic. He moderates the Reddit, and he's kicked off the Oakland Report because he calls it propaganda, even though everything is meticulously cited. And meanwhile, Trashy never cites his sources and puts out just blatant, disgusting propaganda that doesn't even pass the smell test. Anyway, I digress. How does macro operate? 3 services: 911 to the macro team, direct community calls like I did when I called for Mark, or the on-view calls, which are self-initiated by macro units. Oh, macro drives around. That's right. Macro drives around in a van. The macro unit consists of a pair of responders, a community intervention specialist, and an emergency medical technician or EMT. And when macro responds to a call, they can assess the situation to assure safety, and if they need to transport the recipient to a referred service, they can call someone else. Alternatively, if they refuse service, macro provides them with, this is mostly what they do, to be honest with you. Most of what macro does is hand out water bottles and blankets. We are overpaying millions of dollars to essentially do what amounts to having somebody drive around to the well-known homeless encampment and offering people water and blankets. I don't see why we have to spend this much to facilitate that. Okay, more data. I like data. Oh, we talked about this already, but let's go through it. Macro currently tracks various data about each contact, including the race and identity of the recipient, to assess equity objectives. On average, macro services 434 contacts a month, 5,208 contacts per year based on Q3 2023 data. 92% of contacts are with unhoused person, 66% are Black, and 83% are BIPOC. So they are helping the white people. I think 17% of the white people are being helped. And here are some monthly contacts. As you can see, the on-view self-initiated took a plummet immediately after starting. That's kind of interesting. And here are some other data. Okay, given the objective of macro to reduce police flow and address mental health issues, we note these key statistics from the third quarter of 2023, which reflect macro's current operating state. 138 contacts per month. 38% are dispatched, transferred from 911 for 1,656 per year. 85 contacts per month. Just under 20% are mental health related. 84 contacts per month are resolved by referral to public or private social services, and 26 contacts per month resolved with the provision of health, mental health, or drug treatment services at 312 per year. The figure below shows the flow call of handling from initiation. Counts reflect the average monthly service volume during the most recent quarter of macro operation. And the flow chart will show you the 3 different ways that you can get macro help and where it goes. I'm going to kind of go through this. To the biggest part, does macro reduce police costs? To estimate police cost saving, we obtained log data for all calls to Oakland 911 in 2019 and labeled the call categories according to the report provided by the RPSTF by the Center of Public Safety Management. This data already categorizes calls based on whether a sworn officer is required, and then we can tell whether or not macro would have been able to actually handle it. From this analyst, we do not distinguish not we, but Tim in his research, did not distinguish between police and fire dispatch calls. They're treating all the dispatches as police dispatches because only 5% of 911 transfers to macro are from fire. So virtually all of them are coming from police. So thus, even if the cost of firefighter responses are different, the impact will only produce a few percentage error points in these estimations. So in total in 2019, 442,931 calls were handled by OPD dispatch, of which 3,041,524 did not require the presence of a sworn officer, 77% of these calls. Of those calls, 10,997 were macro eligible, and 5,732 were serviced by the police. Others did not receive a police car, presumably due to insufficient police sources. Then we have some charts and graphs. And I'm going to get to the final numbers here that quantified 5 times more expensive. Remember, macro is 5 times more expensive than the police it replaced. And for what? Let's go back here. Macro saves 17% of police costs for every dollar spent, a negative 83% return on investment annually, 5 times as much. One might argue that direct costs for macro should be included in the police diversion added to the cost saving. However, to account for this possibility, Tim also estimated that the best case saving scenario within the current operating plan, which would be expand macro to a staff of 57, including an increase from current 19 to 42 responders with the budgeted cost of $9 million per year. And it would allow macro to handle 64% of these calls. However, even with this best case scenario, macro would save $1,863,000 of OPD costs per year, a savings of 20 cents in police costs for every dollar spent, exactly 1/5, or estimated. This macro meets its equity goals. Not sure. If the whole point was to decrease negative interactions with the police or increase trust with the public, there's no evidence of this. So it looks like macro is not working. Here's another good data point. Macro reports that 45% of its recipients are repeat clients, indicating that many clients are not seeing improvement. But reliable conclusions cannot be made at this time without more detail from macro. Where is the detail? It's been 3 years. And the bottom line is macro is not meeting its goals. Those 5 goals that they stated, they're not meeting them. Like negligible benefits on police costs, has had only limited success in getting its clients help through referrals, has no indication that it's reduced negative interactions between police and clients, and it provides 0 data on whether clients are improving their lives. Only 19% of macro's calls result in a successful referral to social health services in Alameda County. And at current service rate, that represents just 1,008 referrals per year at the average cost of $2,976 per referral. Every person that macro is referring is costing taxpayers nearly $3,000 to pass them off to someone else where they may not even get help. Why are we funding this program to the tune of $9 million per year? Why is macro and other programs not being scrutinized to make sure that they're actually working as intended? And why are we allowing people to continue to pour resources from public safety when, again, we only have 35 police officers patrolling the streets of Oakland at any given time for a city of 500,000 people? Macro ain't work. It's not working. Hopefully in the future it can work. But what will people say this election cycle when asked about the macro program? What will people who are vying for elected office in the city of Oakland say when we ask them, do you support the macro program? Do you believe it is working? And if not, what changes would you make? hopefully they've watched Gotham Oakland, like, subscribe, and maybe read the comment, and they're prepared for these questions. Do they impress the voters? And maybe we can actually get some people in office who know what the heck they're doing. As always, I love you, neighbors. God bless you. Signing off.
Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here.